Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever Global Grassroots Leaders Climate. My name is Neha Matthew Shah, and I work with the Sierra Club's International Climate and Policy Campaign. We've collectively organized this summit as a response to the Biden Climate Leaders Summit in April to ensure that grassroots leaders around the world are at the table and their voices, demands are elevated, particularly towards US decision makers. If you missed our welcome message earlier today, you can visit our webpage to watch it, and we'll make sure that that link is shared here with our viewers. This summit features 33 grassroots leaders representing 30 organizations in 17 countries. And today, we have several grassroots leaders present on this webinar to introduce themselves and their work. I just want to briefly ask my colleague Sherelle Blazer to also introduce herself. Sherelle, are you there? Just give us 1 second. I think Sherelle is experiencing some technical difficulties. So I will just move it forward to our grassroots leaders. Oh, there you are, Sherelle. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Sherelle Blazer. I'm the Senior Director of the International Climate and Policy Campaign at Sierra Club. I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for joining us. And I will go on mute now. Turn it over to the grassroots leaders.
Great, sounds good. And then I do see others of our colleagues, particularly our co-partners in organizing this event, Friends of the Earth US. Kate and or Luisa, if y'all are on, would like to also introduce yourself, I'll just give you a chance to do that as well.
Hi, my name is Katie Angeles, and I work with Friends of the Earth US, and we are super excited to have you all on here today and are just completely amazed by all that you fight for and you've accomplished. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. And yes, so we have about 15 grassroots leaders in the room right now, and I expect more to join as we move into the hour. Regardless, I want to thank you all, whether you are here or listening later and participating through various pieces of the summit. Thank you so much for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of creating what this summit looks like and what these kinds of accountability-focused dialogues with US decision makers are going to continue to look like. So we're here today to have you all out there, the public, meet our grassroots leaders. And so if we can give about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, I will call on various participants here and our grassroots leaders to introduce yourself, the region and country you're speaking from, and the issues you wish to elevate as a grassroots leader. And we'll move through the rest of the conversation. So without further ado, I think Otuo, if you are still online and would like to go first.
Thank you very much. My name is Otuo Champon, and then I'm from Ghana, West Africa. I'm the director for Eco Warriors Movement in Ghana, and we are working with grassroots. We are working at the grassroots level with indigenous and local farmers to practice climate smart farming. Moreover, we are also working seriously to translate climate information into local languages for people in local communities to appreciate and be aware of the issue of climate change, that of adaptation, mitigation, and resilience building. So our work primarily focuses on building capacity of the rural folks. And in Ghana, most of them are farmers. So we teach them on climate smart farming. And as such, we have also been able to translate most of the climate information, which perhaps are in English language, to local Ghanaian languages. For them, they have short videos, infographics, where they're able to appreciate and also understand what we mean by climate change. Because to the ordinary Ghanaian or to the ordinary Ghanaian farmer, climate change is only nothing but abstract. unless you are able to relate climate change to the effects in agriculture, to the effects in the energy sector, he doesn't really understand what climate change is. You're able to tell him his yield is reducing because of climate change. You're able to prove with empirical data for him to understand. He doesn't really get to understand what climate change is. And so we are working so hard to translate all these climate information into local languages for them, where we play it in the local radio stations, in community PA systems, for them to appreciate what climate change is. And also providing some basic logistics and farming inputs like organic compost or organic manure for them to use. So we provide organic manure for them so that they're able to use it at the end of the growing season. They pay back to us. We are also working on currently securing some seedlings for them. The major challenge has, however, been funding to be able to scale up these projects to other communities in the other local communities or indigenous communities in the country. And so we are open for partnership. I'll share our Facebook page and our website in the chat box. Anyone who's interested and want to partner in such a project where we can scale it up, our doors are open for partnership in that line. Thank you very much. Otier Champon, Eco Warriors from Ghana.
Thank you so much, Arturo. Next, can I ask Melinda to go?
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking Sierra Club and Friends of the Earth for inviting me to take part in this Grassroots Leaders Seminar, and also to say a warm welcome to everyone that's joining us, and in particular to other colleagues who are also fighting against the destruction of the planet. My name is Melinda Janke. I'm an international lawyer, but I'm also leading a people's movement to protect Guyana from dangerous deep water offshore drilling by ExxonMobil and other oil companies. Guyana is in South America and it's a carbon sink. And we welcome the Biden administration's commitment to tackle climate change. And I note that President Biden has referred to climate change as an existential threat. And of course, we agree completely with that statement. Unfortunately, ExxonMobil has announced discoveries of 9 billion barrels of oil offshore Guyana, and burning that, if it goes ahead, would emit 3.87 gigatons of carbon. That's roughly 10 years emissions from California, or more frighteningly, perhaps 1,600 years of emissions from Guyana. If Exxon is allowed to proceed, Guyana will go from being a carbon sink to a carbon bomb. At the moment, Guyana is the climate leader because as a carbon sink, the country is actually helping to reverse climate change in the sense of taking out more greenhouse gases than we emit. If Guyana becomes a carbon bomb, then that's a significant contribution to destroying the planet. And of course, Exxon's policies to extract this oil runs counter to the new administration's efforts to tackle global emissions and the existential threat of climate change. Exxon shareholders have been talking about Exxon board's refusal to take into account what the shareholders call the inevitable transition to renewable energy. And indeed, this strategy of drill, drill, drill is looking backwards. And it has some unintended consequences, perhaps, one of which is to continue to lock the United States economy into a fuel source that is utterly destructive and belongs to the past, and in a way is an obstacle to retooling the economy for really unlimited and extremely cheap, reliable energy that could provide the transformation to a much better world and to a just world. So this is not just a problem for Guyana. this is an immediate problem for us, but it is also a problem for people in the United States because it has an impact on your economy. And it could have an impact also on your future. Exxon is in dire financial straits. The Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis said that recently. And that has implications, for example, for all the pension funds that are holding shares in Exxon and seeing their value going down. So this is not simply about sustainability in the climate. This is actually about people's future, not just our future, but also the future of people in the United States who are relying on their pension funds to provide them with a decent life on retirement. Now, in Guyana, there is enormous anger at the exploitative terms of Exxon's deal with Guyana, which basically gives the oil companies 87.5% of Guyana's oil for free. Guyana pays all of the costs. And it's a deal under which Guyana gets no money, but actually goes and picks up 12.5% of the oil and then has to sell it, something that Guyana has no idea how to do. And then what's left is what Guyana gets. There have been demands for renegotiation. There's extensive criticism of Exxon's operations. We know that they are using faulty equipment. They've said so, and that's an enormous worry for us. And there's ongoing litigation, and they have been flaring billions of cubic feet of gas, which they are not supposed to do. So this deep water, ultra deep, in fact, because it's 120 miles offshore, the ocean is a mile deep, the oil is 2 miles below the seabed. This is extremely, extremely dangerous in a country that has absolutely no experience of oil and gas, that has a very weak regulator. We do have very strong environmental laws, but they're not being implemented. Now, this poses an enormous threat. We're seeing frightening systemic failures in Exxon's operations. Darren Woods boasted that first oil was achieved in Guyana ahead of schedule, but 5 years faster than the average timeline for the industry and at an industry-leading development cost. But he didn't tell investors that Exxon was using this faulty equipment and ended up flaring these billions of cubic feet of natural gas. And this is a great worry for us because there have also been problems. The EPA has fined Exxon for a hydrocarbon release caused by a failure to follow procedures. These may seem like very small things, but we know that these small failures can lead to a catastrophe. You only have to, I don't have to remind people, I think, about the BP Macondo well blowout, which had an absolutely catastrophic impact on the Gulf of Mexico, an area saturated with oil and gas infrastructure and expertise and response capability, compared to Guyana, which is 1,000 miles away from the nearest response capability. The country, Guyana, doesn't have anything with which to deal with an oil spill. A well blowout, a tanker collision, anything that happens could have catastrophic effects for Guyana, but also for the Caribbean. So we're talking about an offshore drilling project that is economically heading in the wrong direction, that is financially disastrous for Guyana, and that poses a serious danger to Guyana, to the Caribbean, and ultimately to the entire planet, because greenhouse gas emissions are contributing to global warming. Greenhouse gas emissions are making the oceans more acid, and we are getting rising sea levels. And Guyana is particularly vulnerable to this because the capital city and most of the coastline are either very low lying or already below sea level. We're taking action to deal with this. We've started litigation. There's one court case which is in the Court of Appeal challenging the petroleum production license to Exxon. There's a second court case in which we were successful and cut Exxon's permits down from 23 years to 5 years, which means that the permit runs out next year instead of in 2040, and they have to apply for a new permit. And the third case, and this is perhaps the most exciting one, is a constitutional claim challenging the oil on the grounds that we're asking the court to say whether this massive proposed oil build-out is compatible with the right to a healthy environment guaranteed by the Constitution of Guyana. In closing, I think I want to leave you, oddly enough, with the words of a former chief executive of Exxon, Rex Tillerson, who was asked about, who gave testimony to the subcommittee following the BP Macondo well blowout. And he was asked, well, what would be your response? He said, we are not well equipped to handle this. And when asked again, he said the response capability doesn't exist and and probably never will. The response capability does not exist and probably never will. That's not my view. That's the view of Rex Tillerson in testimony to an American Committee on Energy and Commerce, the House of Representatives, the 111th Congress, second session, 17th of June, 2010, and nothing has changed since then. So I want to close really with the message that this is so dangerous, it affects us all, and I would urge everyone to come together to protect Guyana, the Caribbean region, the United States, and the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melinda, and especially for raising such an important issue in Guyana that impacts us all. Next up, I want to ask if Andre and Johannes, if you want to unmute and share. And just very quickly, for those of you that just joined, thank you so much for being on. We are live streaming this conversation to Facebook. If you want to share any links or pieces in the chat, we will make sure that those get shared on our Facebook page. Also, if anyone who's watching has questions for our participants, please feel free to share those and we will get to them through the course of the webinar. Andre, Johannes?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's great to be participate in this such a great opportunity with all the grassroots leader around the world. My name is Andri Prastio. I'm a research and program manager at Trend Asia. I'm based in Jakarta, Indonesia, and my works primarily focus on the fields of sustainable development, energy transitions and transformations, including the climate crisis impacts analysis. As part of it, I'm intensively managing the climate conscious development campaign and advocacy to accelerate renewable energy utilizations and stop Java 9 and 10 coal power plants with the capacity of 2,000 megawatts in Banten, Indonesia, one of the world's biggest new coal complex remaining, despite a clean energy transition trend and pressure from the international community. This coal power plant cost a massive investment around 3.2 billion US dollars. And this project is backed up by several institutions, including the Hana Bank Indonesia, that supported by the IFC World Bank Group, which have a green equity approach initiative. And the specific project that I'm currently campaigning for, the Java 9 and 10 project, is predicted to release a huge amount of the emissions, 250 million tons of the carbon dioxide over 25 years operations. It means that this equivalent to the annual emissions of Thailand or Spain, according to the report by Sustainable Finance Watchdog Records. And then this project, the Java 910 project, will threaten 30 million people. And this project poses a serious threat of the health condition of more than 30 million people living around in Banten and Greater Jakarta. There is very dense populations in Java Island, one of the most dense island in the world. And despite the Banten itself is already have a lot of coal power plant, almost 22 coal power plant in these regions, and this is considered as so many coal power plant in the same area. Additionally, this project in general, for example, like Javan and Enten will, in the upstream level, will contribute to the exploitations of the coal energy as source of the major environmental threats, for example, like the source of area in Kalimantan and Sumatra, in the bigger pictures of the problem. And at the downstream level, for example, the Java 9 and 10, which I'm focusing and campaign with Johannes Genito, will contaminate the agriculture area and then coastal areas in Banten, which are the main source of the livelihood of people or the community living around the coal power plant. So with an estimated operating lifetime around 30 until 40 years, Indonesia will operate new coal power plant with the massive capacities until 2060, despite all the studies and the initiatives say that the existence of the coal power plants must be completely stopped at 2040. So this deadline is vital to the global efforts to prevent the global impact of the climate crisis and to prevent the global temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius to be achieved. So by participating the event, I hope I can spread the concerns about the importance of to accelerate the energy transitions, and then the importance of stopping new coal power plant and not going to continue all the planning or the contract new coal power plant as soon as possible if we are serious to tackle the climate crisis problem. I think that's for my short introductions. Thank you, Neha. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andre. Johannes, would you like to follow up? Johannes, I'm not able to hear you. Say something. No, still can't hear you. Try maybe signing out and signing back into the Zoom and see if it works again. Okay, we'll come back to you. Okay, next up, Vaughn, are you there?
Yes.
Great.
Hi. Good evening from Philippines. I am Vaughn Michael Tobes. I am 17 years old. And yeah, I am from the Philippines. I work with 0 Hour, especially 0 Hour Asia and 0 Hour Philippines. And my work focuses on lobbying and climate education and mobilizing my fellow youth here in the Philippines. I have organized a lot of projects to educate my fellow youth here in the Philippines. To everyone who are listening right now or watching, this is my message. I can't say that I am speaking for the 104 million Filipinos, but as a brown and gay teenager Filipino, I say this for my fellow minorities and marginalized people who are abused and are being abused, displaced, or killed by your actions and decisions. This is for my planet. This is for all the lives that were taken by climate change exacerbated typhoons, landslides, homelessness, poisoning, and pollution. Because you refuse to believe that your idea of development have been killing and are killing people in the global south. This is on you. Don't say that you care for lives when you actually don't. No friend would ever choose profit over our lives. This is on you. As I speak right now, hundreds to thousands of Filipinos are fighting for their lives or either grieving the loss of their loved ones and their homes that are still underwater because of floods, because we were devastated by a typhoon last night. So what now? Thoughts and prayers? Or a speech to commend the resilience of those who survived? But what about those who didn't? Just some names needing prayers in your speech. We are in an environmental and climate collapse. And the most important thing right now isn't profit. It's the lives of my people, of billions of people in the global south who are being disproportionately affected by the effects of climate change, plus the effects of imperialism you call aid and development. We are not blind, and certainly we're not fools and barbaric and uncivilized as what you have done us. We are also not poor. We are rich in natural resources that you are stealing from us. We're not developing. We are recovering from the effects of colonization and exploitation done by your country. Three of the strongest typhoons to ever be recorded in history all devastated the Philippines, especially my region here, Samar. We're in the two made landfall in 2020 in a span of 2 weeks. Our planet is fragile. It cannot handle your grief for a long time. And it's not like you're the ones suffering from your actions. It is us. I am young, but I am not immature, and I am not a fool. We can no longer tolerate your actions and behavior, nor can we accept any more thoughts and prayers. We want actions, and we want them now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really powerful and inspiring words, and important for all of us to be carrying as we move into the meetings for the rest of the week. Thank you so much, Juan. Next up on my screen, I see Matthias. Are you there? Matthias, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Great. Hello. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And I really commended the message from Vaughn from Philippines. That was really very powerful and inspiring to all of us. Thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to introduce myself. My name is Matias Diamunda. I'm based from Tanzania, and I work with an organization, a grassroots organization called the Foundation for Environmental Management and the Campaign Against Poverty. We have been working on issues related to environment and climate change, working on different agendas regarding climate change. And one of them is gender and climate change. Most of the climate change impacts that are happening right now, they are affecting most seriously women and other marginalized groups. So we have an approach that we have come together for CSOs, grassroots and national level CSOs that are working on climate change to put the issue of gender and the climate change in the spotlight so that we can have a clear focus on making sure that the women who are most impacted, youth who are most impacted, and other vulnerable groups like indigenous people, they are given a stronger voice in decisions regarding climate change and issues that affect the environment. So this is one of the issues that we have come up and we are currently mobilizing ourselves to create this vibrant movement in Tanzania and at regional level to make sure that gender issues are also given importance in climate change decisions. We are also looking into the issue of climate change financing because we have seen lately in our country there is no really serious investments that is done, whether by the government or other private institutions on issues related to climate change. Therefore, we are advocating at national level to make sure that there is a serious investment on tackling the challenges that are brought by climate change. And what we can see is that at national level, there are no budgets that are allocated at national level to make sure that issues of climate change at different levels are being tackled, and there's a serious investment on financial wise, on how at different levels, at village level or at a community level, where communities can come together and address the issues of climate change as a result of the budgets that have been allocated by the government. So we don't see that right now being done. But we are also looking at global level, what efforts at global are being done to address issues of climate change, and what financing institutions are there that are supporting the issues of climate change at different levels. Therefore, we want to make sure that climate change financing is given an importance at national level, and at different decision-making levels, and also at global level. Efforts are being made to make sure that funds are being allocated to address the issues of climate change. But we are also looking into grassroots participation, community participation in general. Because if we really want to address the issue of climate change, then we have to really involve the communities that are directly impacted by the challenges that are brought by climate change. We cannot make the issue of climate change parliament, or is discussed at national level, or it is discussed at international levels, but there is no serious involvement of communities and the grassroots organizations that are directly dealing with the impacts of climate change. So I really congratulate of the organizers of this summit, that they have realized that grassroots organizations and communities are at the forefront of fighting climate change, and therefore they need to be given all the support it is required for them to fight the impacts of climate change. And when I'm talking about support, we are talking about technical support, but also financial support, because as grassroots organizations, sometimes we don't have enough financial muscles to really undertake serious projects that can impact the lives of the people at the grassroots level. And I think, in my opinion, that financing on climate change should focus on the grassroots, at grassroots levels, where there are people who are directly dealing with the issues of climate change, and the impacts of climate change are really being felt. But we also currently we are in a plan of coming with a national level campaign of making sure that different stakeholders, public and private, are involved in the issue of climate change. And we are coming with an initiative known as Tanzania Green Plus Initiative, where we want different stakeholders, whether are private companies or government-owned institutions, they directly participate in tree planting campaigns that we are going to start later this year. So we want the campaigns for climate change to be as much as involving different stakeholders at differently. Climate change is real, and we need to take serious actions towards addressing the impacts of climate change. Most of the private companies are benefiting from sources from the environment that they have invested, but they don't want to give back in addressing the issues of climate change. So we want private companies to also allocate budgets for in their annual incomes to make sure that they address issues related to climate change at different levels. But also at our capacity, we are trying our level best to monitor different projects that are funded by international financial institutions like the World Bank and the African Development Bank and other international financial institutions to make sure that their projects that they are conducting do not accelerate the problem that we already have of climate change. Because most of the projects that they implement, sometimes they cause environmental hazards to communities, and therefore increasing the already problem that exists of climate change. So we want multilateral development banks and other international financial institutions and the multinational companies that are investing in Tanzania to make sure that they really give an eye on the issues that are affecting our environment, and they are accelerating the problem of climate change in Tanzania. So these are the few issues that we are doing, and probably later in the discussion, I will still continue to share more that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for everything you shared. And to our viewers out there, just so you know, we are looking at a few next steps coming out of this summit. We are capturing a lot of the localized issues and asks that grassroots leaders are bringing up. And we will not only be bringing these directly to agency meetings where they're relevant, US decision makers where they're relevant, we will also be capturing these in some sort of a written white paper and releasing that as well, and continuing to follow up with decision makers beyond the summit. Again, if you have any questions about some of the pieces that have been brought up so far, please feel free to share those questions and we will get to them today. Going to move to another introduction. Johannes, I see that you're back. Do you want to try to unmute and see if we can hear you?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hi everyone. Good evening from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm working with Andres in Asia organizations based on Jakarta. Yeah, I think Andres has been presented all our concern, our working so far for the coal power plant 9, 10, Java coal power plant 9 and 10 in Banten. That's it, I think, and thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Yeah,
Thank you again. Thank you. Mumbere, I know you're ready to speak next. Mumbere, are you there? You're still muted.
Hello,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm Edwin. Yes, I am there. Hello, thank
Yes,
you.
we can hear you. We can hear you.
Hello, thank you. I'm Edwin Mombere. I'm the coordinator for Center for Citizens Conserving. It's a community organization working in Western Uganda, that is the East African region. We have been working on several activities. One is first, I have to take you to the issue that I want to bring to the world, the international world, is Stop EACOP. EACOP is the East African crude oil pipeline that runs from Uganda to Tanga, and it's about 1,445 kilometers. It's going to be the world's longest heated crude oil pipeline, and it's going to go through several communities and wildlife. So this is already showing that there's going to be an impact on wildlife, and tourism is going to be affected. We are seeing that the communities are being displaced and the compensation is taking long. Well, this whole project will emit carbon dioxide, which is also going to contribute to to the already existing climate change catastrophes that we're already facing as a country. So we are calling on the rest of the world to join us, and please add your voices to ours so that we can stop the ECOP, because it's going to cause a lot of catastrophes than the positivities our governments are telling us to expect from this investment. The reason why we are not supporting it is because the world generally is shifting from the use of fossil fuels to just and clean energies, for example, such as solar, and we are having electric vehicles coming on board. So at the end of the day, we ask ourselves several questions like, who's going to buy this oil that we are heavily investing in, and is it worth it in this 21st century where everything is going electric? Our country, Uganda, is borrowing heavily to invest to make sure this project comes to light. And this is costing us as citizens, as taxpayers. And we are urging our government that if we can invest this money in renewable energy, it could be worth it. So that's why we are calling on the rest of the world to join us, and please talk to other financial agencies not to finance the ECOP. As an organization, we have had several activities, and we have successfully achieved the following. We are helping translate the information about the East African crude oil pipeline into the local languages, because most of the information is written in English. So we are trying to write it into several local languages so that the communities can understand, and they should be able to know what they should expect from this investment. They think all is rosy, that all things are okay once the government is investing, but with the information that we are sharing with them, they're able to make a decision. They're able to talk to the government about different decisions that have been taken. And we are hoping that in some point the government is making changes in the policies that it had already made in regards to oil and gas investment. We're also working hand in hand with the local governments. For example, 4 of them have adopted the clean energy policy into their plans. These plans run for 5 years. So we have had some install solar security lighting systems, clean energy cook stoves in all government hospitals. That is, for example, in the western part of Uganda. So I can say it has been a journey, and it is still a journey. We are working towards it, and we are still bringing more on board. The other is we are doing a movement building where we are showing various communities within the ECOP affected districts. Through films, we are showing them the negative effects of oil exploration. The reason why we are doing this is to help them to be best decision makers and to know what to expect, because the government is only informing us of the positives. It's not informing the communities of the negatives that come along with oil exploration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mambere. I think next we have Omar. Omar, are you there?
Yep. Thanks, Neha. Hi, everyone. So my name is Omar Elmawi, and it's really a privilege to be here today and hearing the stories, amazing things that my fellow community leaders from different parts of the globe have been doing. So my name is Omar Elmawi. I work for the Decolonize campaign, which is essentially a movement that is pushing towards a green and sustainable energy future for Kenya. My work is to resist coal in Kenya, but also to push for green renewable energy. For today, if you'll allow me, I'd like to share the case in Kenya and how climate change is affecting Kenya, and then just finalize by giving our asks in terms of what we are asking from the rest of the world to support us on this important action point. So one, Kenya is located in East Africa. For those who don't know, East Africa is in Africa. And climate change is affecting us as well by a big deal as the rest of the world. We have seen instances of lots of floods. There's a big problem when it comes during the dry seasons. We've had locust invasions for most part of the African region, among others. Like many African countries, I believe almost all the African countries have signed to the Paris Agreement, committing to cutting down our CO2 emissions because of how the situation is. And Kenya itself, climate change is costing us about 3.5% socioeconomic loss to our GDP every year. That is about 3 to 5 billion US dollars directly attributed to climate change impacts because of what's happening. And it's worrying because we are seeing while our country is largely endowed to push for renewable energy, we're leading when it comes to renewable energy. Talk about geothermal. We have the biggest geothermal capacity in Africa and also top 10 in the world. We have the biggest wind plant in Africa, and so is solar and others. And currently where we are standing, about 93% of our electricity sources are from renewable energy. And therefore, we are worried that at this time and age, we are having a government and we are having international financial institutions, some of them located in the US, wanting to come to our country and in East Africa and in Africa to invest in fossil fuel projects like coal plants, like coal mining and others that are going to affect us really significantly. So we are really worried because one, we are seeing that over 100 financial institutions are withdrawing or divesting from coal and fossil fuels. We are seeing that countries in the US, including the Biden administration, coming up with measures of cutting down on investment in fossil fuel projects and more of moving towards projects that are greener and sustainable. And therefore, this is quite worrying that the same countries, the so-called developed countries and companies that are found in these areas are investing in projects in the rest of the world, in Africa, that are going to affect us really significantly. So we are not just talking about environmental impacts. We are talking about how this is costing us lives and money. People are dying each and every day because of these projects that these governments and financial institutions are investing in. Our message is really simple. We're just asking that you leave the fossil fuels in the ground, that we divest from coal and fossil fuels, and that we invest in sustainable renewable energy. And we are asking this because we know that our country and our continent is more than capable to sustain and sustain itself by utilizing greener and sustainable renewable energy options. Definitely my parting shot will be that we invest in investments in fossil fuel is causing deaths. It's causing displacement of thousands and thousands of Kenyans and Africans, that it's causing disasters and it's causing suffering to our loved ones. And therefore, to us, it's important that these people really respect the sanctity of life and that they only invest in projects that are really bettering the communities and not in any way affecting them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Omar. I want to ask if 350 Cote d'Ivoire, Sheikh, if you're there, can you unmute yourself? Our participant from Cote d'Ivoire, can you hear me? Okay, maybe we'll come back to you. Next, I see Prince. Prince, are you there? Can you unmute?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Nia.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much to Sierra Club and Friends of the Earth US for organizing this amazing meetup. My name is Prince Papa. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. And currently I work with the Global Catholic Climate Movement as the regional programs coordinator, that is the African region. I am an artist focusing on performing arts, movement builder, as well as effective coalitions management. And I just want to introduce Global Catholic Climate Movement, GCCM in short. The movement was started around 2015, and in the climate world, to talk about 2015, what comes into mind is around when the Paris, the famous or infamous Paris Agreement. So Pope Francis released this encyclical called Laudato Si. And this was a really received letter to the world. Some call it a book. Within the Catholic, we call it a letter or an encyclical. And this really talked about care for our common home and care for creation. And it was a groundbreaking voice from the faith communities. And the mission of the movement was to motivate the global Catholic community to actively care for creation and advance climate justice. This was the first time that there was this massive call from the church hierarchy to look at our relationship with nature and other creation. And we work around 4 issues. One is on eco-conversion that we have to look at as much as people of faith look up to God, that they want to go to heaven, they ask for this. Our common home is where we live, where we share with everyone, and we want it to be protected. And we want it to be protected for us and for those who will come after us in hundreds of years to come. And we must ensure that we listen to science in ensuring that our common home is preserved. And the second area is on divestment or footprint reduction. And we work within the Catholic Church and other institutions, asking them to commit not to finance any fossil fuel now and in the future. This divestment call has been really great, where major Catholic institutions are denouncing the immoral act of investing in fossil fuels. And in areas where divestment is not so much, where in a place where not so many people invest in the fossil fuels, we ask you to commit, make that commitment, that when it comes, we will not be part of it. We will not finance it. And the last one is on advocacy, looking at that climate change. I talk about the poor being the poor and the most marginalized getting the brunt of it a lot. We train Laudato Si animators. So Laudato Si, this encyclical, looks at an ideal world where everyone should be living. So we train animators, free, open and online, free of charge, on climate campaigning, on eco-conversion, on advocacy, so that wherever we are, wherever we see an injustice, we act. And I would like to quote this famous South African who once said in a fight involving the elephant and the rat, if you choose to just stand by and look, then the rat, of course, it will not see you as a good person. So an injustice has to be talked about, has to be condemned. And the climate change is one of the greatest injustices of our world today. And next, we would like to say this, how do we have this? How do we bring this to work? Through one of the activities or interventions I've mentioned is the Laudato Si animators. We find that most fossil fuel investments in Africa, they target places like the wildlife, ecosystem protected areas. They are based in poor communities where their information is really hard to come by. And now through these trainings, we share that information to help the communities understand and be able to counter the narrative that the dirty energy is bringing to them. And two, we work with volunteers. After trainings, we work with our volunteers to ensure that the national institutions, the national conversations goes on through national chapters. In Africa, we have various, and I would like to mention, we have various chapters, including in Uganda, where Edwin spoke about. We are also supporting this campaign against this proposed East Africa crude oil pipeline. And glad to see Mr. Omar from Decolonize Kenya. We're also supporting this campaign. And the uniqueness is that we want the Catholic Church to make statements. And the study has shown, the Pew Research shows that in Africa, and I think this is a global figure, 1 in every 5 persons is a Catholic. And out of those 5 persons, 4 believe in God, 4 believe in some kind of organized kind of worshiping. And now from the Catholic side, we want this 1 person to be converted, have that eco-conversion, knowing that we have a responsibility to take care of our common home. And we have a responsibility to talk for the poor and those without the voice. And 2 is that we work with the Catholic is very, very much organized. We work with the bishops and bishops' conferences. For example, in Kenya, there is the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. In US, there is also the US Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I will focus in Africa because that's where my mandate lies. We ensure that they have this. You just look at the massive following of the church. That 1 out of 5 is a big number in Africa, over 200 million. If we can have this information, and the climate movement needs people to counter the financial abilities of the fossil fuel industry. We ensure that the clergy and the people from the lay persons know the information and have the information from their fingertips. 3, we form Laudato Si circles. Laudato Si circles are very informal community gatherings, maybe from a family perspective or in a community perspective, and we help them deepen their understanding, spiritual understanding on what is at stake and on what God, whom we believe in, asks us to do, our responsibility here. And lastly, it's not only the Catholics who live in this world. There are those who do not believe in God. There are people of other faiths. There are like Muslims are there, Hindus are there. We have a special moment called Season of Creation. And Season of Creation, this was started a long time ago by the Orthodox Church. And now the Catholic has really embraced this. And this is a moment when we reach out to people of other faiths and the people who do not have faith to talk about eco-conversion, talk about what our spiritual or what we call, the Christians call it their Bible, the Muslims call it the Quran. What does it say? What does it demand from us when it comes to caring for our common home? And lastly, I would like to just share with you the call that we are bringing to this meeting today. And I would like to state this quote that if it's not good in the US, if it's not good in the US, then know that it's not good in Uganda. It's not good in the Philippines. It's not good in Mozambique. It's not good anywhere. Any project that we know is not good for our countries, know that it's not good in other people's countries as well. And right now we are working on a petition called the Catholic Petition, and we are targeting the COP on biodiversity, COP15, and also the COP on climate in Glasgow. And we are asking world leaders that we want these two, we want to see improvement on how these two are worked on. There is no much attention on biodiversity, but it is collapsing. And if we are to sustain this, we have to take care both of on biodiversity. We must see that leadership. We must see these leaders working together the COP climate, the COP leadership on climate and the COP on biodiversity climate. And we're asking, this is not only for the Catholics, but it's for everyone to sign and hold these two COPs president leadership accountable for this. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Prince. I think we have about 7 to 8 people left to introduce themselves, and then we'll move into a few questions. So next on my screen, Sridhar, are you there? Sridhar, are you there? Can you unmute? Okay, we'll come back to you. Sarmeen, are you there? Oh, Sridhar, are you back?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Sridhar.
I'm having problems with unmute. Thank you, Neha, and thank you all for very inspiring introductions. I think we are talking after 3 decades of Rio, and my name is Sridhar, and I work with an organization called Environics Trust. We work extensively with communities which are affected by mining, particularly coal mining, in extensive tract in India. And what we find today is that we are kind of burdened with 4 kind of intertwined crises. One is, what we are focusing on, that is the climate crisis, which is, kind of hitting us in the last month itself. We had 2 cyclones, one in the east and one in the west coast in India. And this has been a repeat of last year. And this is pre-monsoon kind of cyclone in India. Just now from Philippines, Juan mentioned about how yesterday there was a typhoon. So the erratic and extreme events have become more and more regular. And this is, kind of exacerbated by the kind of economy which is shattering. Particularly after this pandemic, we are having a shrinkage in economy. We find, the work or employment is reducing. And we also find that, capital has become, even more unequally distributed. In the last decades, we have found that the poor are becoming poorer and the corporates have become richer. So how do we achieve climate justice? So to us, the ecological and environmental justice can happen only if we secure, reparations for the past and current ecological and environmental damage, largely being caused by, fossil fuel industry, the developing world. Also, we need access to better information and the rightful claim of resources and the remaining carbon budget for the poor. We also need to address issues of human rights in almost all areas where energy systems are, or energy projects are there, fossil fuel projects are there. We find not only environmental damages, but huge human right violations. So, and we need to somehow confront this political and corporate collusion. We are finding even in the UNFCCC, corporates are taking more and more center stage. And unless we address the issues of equity, self-reliance among people, green and environmentally sound systems of production, I think we are in for greater injustice and greater loss to the entire world. Now that the US government has come back into the discussion table in the climate summit, I think it has to take a leadership role in changing the production patterns and ensure that all the wrongs of the past are changed with rights for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar. Wellington, are you there?
Thank you so much to the organizers. My name is Wellington Madumira, and I'm from Zimbabwe, representing Zero Regional Environment Organization and also Climate Action Network Zimbabwe chapter. I am a policy and advocacy analyst. I work on green and inclusive energy systems in Zimbabwe, making sure that the voice of the vulnerable communities is heard. Zimbabwe is in Southern Africa. For the benefit of those maybe who are not aware where Zimbabwe is, the southern part of Africa, and our economy is almost more than 80% agro-based. So what it means is, like, if there is climate change impact, which is going to affect our agriculture sector, so it means our economy is going to go down again. Then also looking at what others have already presented on, I think as Zimbabwe, our carbon dioxide emission per capita is around 0.63 tons of carbon dioxide, which is really minimum, especially when you are just looking at emissions at national level. So I think my contribution to this, I think I have a number of issues that I want to highlight. The first one is on the receivers of climate finance. I think other colleagues were talking about climate finance. I think should be given opportunity to prescribe needs for those finances and reach grassroots community who are hardest hit by climate impact. I'm trying to say, sometimes the developed world, they come with some prescription to say, for you to use this grant, you have to use it this way. But as grassroots communities, we are saying, sometimes we understand our environment and we know how to adapt to our environment. So there's no need for them to prescribe what we need to do within our community. Then disbursement of climate finance should not be clear on what we really need in order to adapt. There's a tendency by developed countries to link developing countries CSO with those from the north, so that there's a give and take principle that is practiced underhand. Then on the nationally determined contribution, I think Zimbabwe submitted a 33% emission target, which is too ambitious, so as to buttress our current position that we should be more concerned with adaptation rather than mitigation.
Wellington, you're back on mute. We lost you mid-sentence. Wellington, are you there? Are you there?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So I was saying the emission gap report. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Go ahead. Hello? Can you hear us?
The emission gap report clearly identifies that submitted countries' NDCs are inadequate, especially when we are looking at meeting the Paris Agreement, which is 2 degrees Celsius. This evidence, I think, calls upon the immediate need for nations, especially the developed countries, to increase their ambition, their NDC target levels, especially in light of global stock meeting that is going to happen. Then also our reporting mechanism should be enhanced and further create a whole linkage and collective experience between or among different partners that is the government, private sector, and the civil society organization. All communication that is biannual reports and updates reports should be on a national basis without just being sectorial for the proper development of modalities, procedures, and guidelines. Then coming from the developing world, I think there's need of exchange of best practice between developed nations and developed nations, whereby there's more like technology transfer amongst countries. Then matters related to adaptation fund, I think there are quite a number of calls on adaptation fund. The documents for accessing climate finances should be simplified, as they are currently complicated with lots of documents that create confusion and hinders the negotiating process. Climate funds should be focused, clearly noting the diversity of sources of finance. Sometimes the requirements for organization to access these adaptation funds, they are tiresome. So for grassroots organization to access these funds, it will be difficult for them to access these funds. So I think we should also give an opportunity for grassroots organization to have that capacity to access funds through maybe strengthen their adaptive capacity of vulnerable groups. Then adaptation, communication, and the global goal on adaptation. I think there's need to strengthen the adaptive capacity of developing countries through enhancing communities' adaptive capacity in the developing world, taking into consideration ecosystem-based adaptation and community-based adaptation. Adapting to climate change remains one of the focal areas, for example, for Zimbabwe, since we are still developing, considering that we also emit, which is our emission is very little. Then capacity development can be one of the bullet points. Developing countries need capacity development in terms of proposal development and also technology transfer. Let's also consider what our national document states in terms of technology transfer. Then climate finance, access to adequate, timely and unconditional climate finance forms the basis upon which climate action can be undertaken. The definition, like even when we are discussing in the COP meeting, the definition of climate finance should exclude loans that are provided to developing countries as they promote perpetual debt for future generation, but rather should be limited to loans provided in line of the 100 billion per year commitment. Donors, usually from the developed world, have a tendency to follow after their money, after disbursement. Biggest polluters should contribute what they pledged, and the finance should reach the intended beneficiary. So we are advocating for climate justice. There is need to have a clear, concrete targets and roadmap on climate finance that are really ambitious enough. Then also on, I think other colleagues, they were talking about involvement of women. I think the narrative of climate change in relation to gender should dwell more on women and youth empowerment and responsive action as opposed to victim portrayal. So I think in conclusion, there's need to have more like improvement of resilience of the grassroots community, which are really hardest hit by climate impact, taking into consideration that most of them, like in Zimbabwe, they are agro-based. Their livelihood is basically on agriculture. Then also in terms of investment, especially when we are looking at energy, which is maybe a large polluter.
Wellington, I think you're on mute again. Wellington, are you there? Wellington, I think you were just making a concluding statement. I can't hear you. I will move to the next participant. In case you want to finish up your comments at the end, I think that there will be time for that. The participant from Cote d'Ivoire, I see your hand raised. Would you like to speak next?
Yes. Hi. Did you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Hello. Yes. My name is Sheikh Traoré. I'm from Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa. And I'm 39 years old, married, one child. And actually, I'm working as a full-time mathematician since 2011. I've engaged into activities and social justice. And I've also found, I'm founder and CEO of the NGO, Creative Côte d'Ivoire, which also is part of some regional and international civil civil society organization, and above 350.org and Africa VUCA, which are some platform which aiming to fight against climate change. And I'm also an alumni IVLP, International Visitor Leadership on Renewable and Sustainable Development in US for the year 2018. And I've engaged in sustainability as a priority for my country in Africa, especially as I say, I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, which is a French country, and also because I think the people need to make action to change things, to shift the power in the climate crisis. I've been working full time in recycling fields. That's what inspired me, engaging in social justice. So with the NGO 360 Côte d'Ivoire, our aim is to fight against climate change with two main objectives: fight the plastic pollution as it is affecting us badly with some method like with recycling, reducing, reusing, and since the last 2 years we have been engaging to resilience with the youth as the one who belong the future, and also with fighting against fossil fuels industry. And you guys is just asking people or government to shift their energy ambition. Instead of using fossil fuel, they should transit to renewable energy. And we have been aware of this COVID-19 as we have changed everything, and also politics in Africa are showing us this time as climate change is already happening around us. So for my support, I'm thinking about giving opportunity for population, for people to have the good information in order to act well. And that's one. And the second part is about the resources. I've been engaging in social justice since 2011 as a kid, and we have been facing many difficulties about the main resources about climate change. Mainly, all the resources are in English, which is a barrier. And secondly, for civil society organization in Africa, we lack some kind of finance. And this is another my two main preoccupation. Thank you.
Thank you again. I just wanted to name that a few of our participants are having to drop off because it is getting late in different parts of the world. Thank you again for those of you that have managed to stay on for this long. Really appreciate your time. Just have a few more people that I think would like to introduce and speak. Ruth, are you there?
Yachlidu, everyone. It's such an honor to be speaking with all of you today. Deni ina kanagashas kun kanash uchaya naslanish ite shvaik isanch ijich u Ruth Miller Gushtanish iji dakaya kak shugu yasturach u My English name is Ruth Miller. My Denaina name is Shvaik Isim. And my Hebrew name is Ruth Shlomo de Yisrael, as I honor my Ashkenazi Jewish ancestors from my father's side. I am a Denaina woman of the Chukayam tribe, calling in from my homelands of Dechayekak in Anchorage, Alaska, and we are proud to presence the Arctic and our frontline communities from the circumpolar north today. And I'd like to take some time to share some of our experience here in the north. I'm the Climate Justice Director for Native Movement, a broad-reaching, community-oriented nonprofit that advocates for our lands, waters, and bodies. But I'm additionally a youth leader of our first statewide progressive young professional leadership network. Last summer, we had record-breaking wildfires across our state, and as they raged, we watched our thika, our salmon, dying in our streams from heat stroke. Our main food systems that sustain our families, that are illustrated by our languages, that create our regalia and the fabric of our cultures, are being assaulted, toxified, disappeared. Yet today we are still directly threatened by an extractive economy that abandons our communities, undermines our nation-to-nation relationship as tribal sovereigns, and leads us toward environmental catastrophe. There cannot be clearer signs that extraction and fossil fuel dependency are holding our communities and our home hostage, selling our futures away for corporate profit with the help of the US empire. Today, our threats are increasing as global trade and shipping networks begin to profit off of melting sea ice and increased mass navigability of our protected Arctic waters. Every metric of global climate change reveals that the Arctic is suffering climate impacts at a drastically accelerated rate than the rest of the globe, a phenomena that you might know as Arctic amplification. Arctic temperatures over the past 6 years have all exceeded previous records, increasing at more than double the magnitude of the global mean air temperature. In Alaska, rural communities are often highly exposed to chemical pollutants in the fish and the caribou that we subsist on, leading to respiratory conditions and high rates of cancer, as well as potential infertility and birth defects. Resource development projects continue to destabilize the ecosystems and watersheds crucial to the continuation of Indigenous communities and the animal and plant species that we rely on. Alaska has already seen the forced relocation of communities from our ancestral homes due to climate impacts. And released methane from melting permafrost will exponentially accelerate the size and scope of emissions reductions needed to combat the climate crisis. But it's more than that to us, the Arctic's first people. We often say in our movement, defend the sacred. We say, defend the sacred lands, the sacred waters, our sacred bodies. For Indigenous communities, our mental, bodily, spiritual, and community health are one and the same as the health of our ecosystem. Our Alaska Native peoples are living on the front lines of the climate crisis, but our crisis began generations ago with the crisis of colonization that ripped our children from our homes and tore our languages and cultures from our tongues. Our burdens today manifest in even darker ways. Proximity to development projects is a leading predictor of violence against women, girls, and our two-spirit siblings. We are the leading demographic in this country for assault, homicide, and disappearance. Our bodies are the first casualty of non-renewable resource extraction. But today we're not only healing our traumas, but we are doing even more profound work. It is the very wisdom, knowledge, and care that was first persecuted that will guide this world toward recovery and towards just transition. Just transition itself in our community we call kotra ethne, which in the language of the Lord Tenedene means remembering forward. Our frontline communities are the world's most forefront climate experts when it comes to our ethnena, our lands. And in this way, it must be frontline community members that drive a systemic overhaul of massive proportions. We aren't just facing one crisis: global pandemic, mass unemployment, systemic racism, climate crisis, they are all connected. And our response and recovery must be equally as intertwined and holistic. Our solutions must honor the leadership of our relatives in the global South. Our solutions must be actively anti-racist. Our solutions must protect our own, our frontline, disenfranchised, and persecuted community members. What will sustain that connection and achieve true sustainability is a return to the worldview that all life is sacred and our lands and waters must be healed if we can expect healing from them. Towards this goal, our organization supports multiple regenerative economy projects while working with the emergent renewable energy sectors to support native-run renewables that are complementary with our ecology and our food systems. This is technology that we have now. As we encourage widespread economic transition, we are proudly partnering with our labor partners to ensure good, quality jobs with access to unions across these emergent energy sectors. We are working actively to shift the hostage mindset of Alaska as an oil colony and remind our state of our opportunities to thrive economically and culturally once more. Free, prior, and informed consent of impacted communities is the bare minimum of a safeguard to protect against the destruction and devastation that development has brought our lands. Human rights should not be negotiable. Now we have the opportunity to build together. Our youth have learned at the knees of our elders, and we are ready to enter leadership and are eager to lead the way. I hope that we see increased collaboration between such powerful advocacy organizations and our tribes and villages. I hope we see more deep listening and reflection from appointed and elected leaders. I hope we continue to see our brown, Black, and Indigenous leaders taking up space and carrying our stories forward. We implore not only the Biden administration, but all our viewers today to be ambitious. Be ambitious in your relationship building, ambitious in the creativity we use to address these global issues. Be ambitious in the constellations that you draw between yourselves and others. Be ambitious in the action we take now to protect our people. We, the Alaska Natives of what's now called the United States, do not yet believe that we have forgotten how to honor our earth. We are eager to move forward in collaboration with all of you. Thank you so much. We are proud to be working as one.
Thank you, Ruth. Next up, I have Ilham.
Hi, thanks everyone for amazing introductions and the great work that everyone's doing is very inspiring. So my name is Ilham Raoult, and I work for Justice Ambiental, Friends of the Earth, Mozambique. I am currently in Cape Town, and our organization works very closely with communities on the ground in different parts of Mozambique who are fighting for their rights to their livelihoods, their rights to life, to homes, to their farming and fishing land that they've all been, many of them have been taken away from. A lot of land grabbing that happens in Mozambique, which also happens amidst a atmosphere of very deeply entrenched corruption, government corruption, where pretty much most all of the money that comes from fossil fuel investments goes into the pockets of economic and political elites, local and international. So the campaign that I coordinate is the Say No to Gas campaign. And this campaign is aims to get the gas industry out of Mozambique. So in northern Mozambique, in the Cabo Delgado region, there are the giants who are all running this gas industry or leading this gas industry. So Total is involved, Eni, the Italian company, ExxonMobil, and Eni and ExxonMobil together are leading two of the projects, which is the Rovuma LNG project and the Coral LNG project. And these three projects are the biggest in Africa. And the US Export-Import Bank decided last year to finance Mozambique LNG, which is run by Total, to finance it with $4.7 billion, which is a big problem. And it was also done under Trump administration, who had members of Export-Import Bank, of Exim, who were really close. So this is something that we definitely need to work on now with the new administration. So let me tell you what the issues are that was created by this gas industry. while the gas is going to be exploited offshore, onshore, Total is building the Afungi LNG park, which is basically the park that's going to be housing all the facilities, support facilities for the industry. So what often happens is that the other companies who are involved and the finances who are involved say that they are not responsible for the impact on the ground. However, Eni and Exxon, even though they are offshore, are going to be utilizing the facilities in the park. And in that way, Eni, Exxon, all the contractors, all the other companies exploiting gas, and all the purchasers and the financiers, which include private banks and states, one of which is the US, are all equally responsible for the impacts of the industry, because the Total, Eni, Exxon, they cannot exploit gas if they don't have financing. So this 4.7 billion enables the human rights violations and the climate destruction that comes from these projects. So what we've seen here is forced removals of 550 families who are fishing and farming families. So what happened is the fishing communities who lived right by the sea have been moved many kilometers from the sea. They've been given now their option now to have access to their fishing and to their livelihood is that Total has sent a bus. And once a day, a bus goes from where they've been relocated to another fishing area. But this doesn't work. I mean, anyone who knows anything about fishing would know that it's not something, the fish are not there to be caught at 3 p.m. Fisher people have specific times and they work with the tides and the currents and the moon to decide when they need to go out and get their fish. So this just doesn't work. They've also been moved to another area where, to fish in another area where there's already a fishing community. And they're now coming to another area where, you've got more people fishing in a smaller fishing ground. So this is another problem. Farming families have lost their land. They've been given tiny pieces of land that are far away from where they initially were. And they've all been moved to homes that are also taking up space, as well as this new farmland, taking up space of communities that were already there. So not everyone has received this farmland they were supposed to be given. And a lot of people, because of the ridiculous options that they were given as compensation, have chosen to go with monetary compensation. But many of them have not received this compensation, or they don't get it every month. They don't get the amount that they want to. And communities, and we've done it, to help as well, have been in touch with Total several times, telling them, we have not received our compensation. And they just ignore it. People say, we have not received our land, and they just get ignored. So people really have lost their livelihoods and have been reliant on food aid from Total for a long time. But now that Total has called the force majeure, which is part of their contract with the government that enables them to pull out of the state because of certain incidences. And one of these, which is now the security situation in Cabo Delgado, which I'll tell you about, Total has pulled out. And they are coming back, but this could be any time within 2 years. And they have taken all the employees out and they've paused their operations. However, this also means that they've completely stopped paying compensation to people. They've stopped with the food aid, and they are no longer fulfilling their payment obligations to contractors, which include small local Mozambican contractors, which may well go bust because of this. Because of these contracts they'd already signed with Total. So another impact of this industry is the massive climate destruction. So the environmental impact assessment that was done, the first one was done about 8 years ago, said that 7 years ago, said that 550 families were going to be relocated, and also said that the construction of just one LNG train will increase the greenhouse gas emissions of the whole of Mozambique by up to 10% within 2 years. So, and it also says that this cannot be mitigated. So all these companies went into this knowing what the impact was going to be. And when the US financed this project, it also was very well aware of what the impacts were going to be. So one of the other problems here is the security and the violence that's currently happening in Cabo Delgado. So in 2017, coincidentally, when the companies started becoming, or not coincidentally, when companies started becoming present in the area, they also started the attacks of insurgent groups who were committing massive human rights violations and attacks on communities. This has been a faceless insurgency since the beginning, yet from the start, the government and the companies have claimed that it's Islamist militants and terrorists. They've linked it to ISIS, to Al-Shabaab, when that's actually quite convenient, when we do feel that there is a link between the gas and the violence. And there was an Amnesty International report that came out recently, which also talks about this. So one example of how it's linked is the military came in order to defend what was supposed to be the people against the militants, the insurgents, but actually just ended up defending the companies and the area where the Fungi LNG park is being built. And what's also happened is the military has now been committing these horrible human rights violations on the actual communities. So if they know, for example, who has received compensation in cash, they would come to a family and hold the family member who accesses this compensation, so it would be the father, hold him hostage or threaten to sexually assault the women in the family if they do not receive this compensation. So, and then there have been private security companies that have come in, like at first it was the Russian Wagner Group, who has a terrible, notorious reputation for its impacts in its work in the Central African Republic, in Libya, and in the Central African Republic, when 3 Russian journalists went to investigate Wagner's impact, they were killed. Then it's been the DAG group, which is a South African paramilitary group who has left, but also indiscriminately killed Mozambican civilians. So there are South African groups who are now calling for them to be investigated for war crimes in South Africa. So what we do in order to what we're doing to get this industry out is taking information from the ground. So we work very closely with communities and in communities in Cabo Delgado. We have staff in the communities, and we have regular updates of who's being affected by what, when last Total paid people, for example. Also, one of the things that we've learned is that all the aid that's been coming for refugees, 700,000 refugees have now been created. They were displaced because of the insurgent attacks. All the international aid that's coming to them is actually going from the governments being given to the military and not to people. So there's also lots of empty, unused land in Cabo Delgado that's owned by private elites. But the government's refusing to let this land open up for refugees, and instead they stand empty, and refugees are now living in communities, which is making it even harder for communities who already live there. So what we're doing as part of this campaign is the information that comes out of from the ground, which is extremely valuable. Of course, I mean, people are putting their lives at risk in order to provide us with this information. We are working very closely with our international partners, including for US, then partners in Italy, Friends of the Earth France, Friends of the Earth England, Wales, Northern Ireland, groups from around the world, where the companies and the financiers and purchasers who are involved in these in the industry are based. So what some of the things we do is, this recently were a few annual general meetings of all the companies, and this is part of our company confrontation, where we also write letters to companies and finances, and with Friends of the Earth US we wrote several letters to US Exim, have written to Development Finance Corporation, and so when they decided on financing, they were very well aware of what was going on, because A, we'd let them know, and many times, and B, this was all in the international media, and C, had they done their proper assessments, they would have seen this. So we go to annual general meetings, we try as much as possible to hold meetings, one-on-one meetings with industry players, but we're not an engaging, we don't have these meetings for engagement or for partnerships. It's very much a confrontation. It's us making demands and getting the information that we want. We also try and do a lot of media work, and which is difficult with the mainstream media, especially in France, for example, where Total is so closely linked to the government and the media, or in Italy, where the government is so closely linked to Eni. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of lobby tours so that we can work with, for example, in Denmark, our partners in Denmark are running a campaign against pension funds. And this is something that is happening in Denmark on a larger scale. This is something that the Danish public is interested in. So one of our campaigns there is working with them on pushing pension funds to divest from companies who are working in the Mozambique gas industry. So we work with organizations in different countries, sort of working into the campaigns that they've already got going, and that they know that the public is working on. So what we want is for US Exim to withdraw its financing. And this is something that we definitely will put on the table now with the new Biden administration. And for DFC, who has not yet made it clear whether they are or are not financing, to not finance. And lastly, for the US government to actually take some charge over ExxonMobil and tell them that they cannot, as a US company, as a taxpayer, be involved in the Mozambique gas industry. And I'm sorry it took so long.
No, absolutely not. Thank you so much, Ilham, for raising all of that. We are almost at the top of the hour, but I see we have two speakers. So I just want to ask again, Seth and Sarmeen, would you like to speak? Seth, are you there? And Sarmeen, are you there? Okay, feel free to unmute still if you are able to. I tried to unmute you myself. Seth, are you there? Hello, Seth. If you're speaking, I can't hear you. Seth, are you there? Hello?
No, what happened is that if there's a fault, there's something.
So, I mean, electric shock.
No, it won't come.
Seth?
If there's something, you tune the machine.
All right. Seth, if you are able to unmute and speak, please do. Otherwise, we have just about 6 minutes left. I am not seeing any questions coming up on Facebook, but I do want to name for all the viewers there, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to all of our grassroots leaders that were able to join. We had a handful of people not be able to join this specific webinar, but all of the organizations and participants are listed on our webpage if you're interested in checking that out. And of course, if you're looking for any other information, please feel free to contact us directly or post in the comment section of this live stream. With that, I want to just ask Sherelle if you have any closing comments or Any questions, last minute questions that you want to pose to any of the participants?
Well, I don't know that we have the time for a last minute question, but this has been deeply moving. I'm really excited about the days to come, and some things that stood out. You know, one of the asks of this entire summit is, you know, we're calling on the Biden administration to stop all overseas funding of fossil fuel projects, and this just really, you know, brought it home for everybody as to why we can't. And I'll quote one of the participants in saying that, you know, if it's not good in the US, then it's not good in any other country. And that just really rings true to me as we are, you know, phasing out coal and phasing out of fossil fuels in the US. How can we, in good conscience, fund those same kinds of projects in other countries? And as Vaughn said, you know, when these atrocities happen that are being, you know, described by our brothers and sisters in the grassroots movements, it's on us. So that's just really sticking with me as we move into our next meeting. So I'm just happy, again, proud, honored to be in the room. Thank you so much for pulling this together, Neha. Thank you. And thank you to everyone else.
Absolutely. I want to share with the participants. There is one comment that we wanted to uplift. Someone is saying, "You are all brave, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of this summit. Thank you for all you are doing. I intend to share this information and do what I can at the grassroots level. You are all amazing. Thank you." I'm sure that sentiment is shared across many of us. And I think one other wonderful thing about this space is being able to learn from and meet each other. So many of us are disconnected in our places of work, and especially in the grassroots of our work. And I think it's integral to interconnect and realize that, you know, we really are not alone in our issues and that they are all inextricably linked. With that, I think, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for staying on across all of these time zones. I hope you get some rest, and especially for our grassroots leaders participating in our private US agency decision maker meetings coming up. Really looking forward to that. And please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.